immature people don't take responsibility for where they are, and they tend to blame people and project their guilt onto others, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so that makes for a really unhappy marriage. Okay, because when I was single, I didn't have anybody to blame my unhappiness on.
Right.
And now that I'm married, you're the reason.
You're the reason.
You're the
Absolutely.
cause. Okay, if you did this, if you would do this, and what we have to understand is that responsibility and irresponsibility are thinking habits.
Right. Good.
It's a mindset.
Good.
And so,
Yes.
so I don't decide to be immature. Immaturity just determines how I respond to situations and
That's
circumstances.
good.
I respond in an immature way because that is my mindset.
How do you know that you're immature? Because
You
I think,
don't.
yeah, and that's just the.
You
I
have
think
to
have
listen.
have people around you that you know that are sound. I mean,
Right.
the Bible constantly talks about changing your mindset, changing the way you think, and so I think in marriage is such a real important thing because I think some people feel good about holding people to the fire on something.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to InConversation with JoelBrooks. I have my lovely wife here, Yvonne, and we're going to talk some about marriage and why marriages are having such a tough time. You hear it commonly said that 1 out of 2 marriages fail as far as first marriages, and then when it gets up to maybe 60% of second and third marriages don't make it. And so you have a lot of failed marriages, a lot of kids growing up in single mom, single dad households. And so it's having a profound effect upon our society, upon the quality of life for people involved in that. I have been through a divorce. My wife has also been through a divorce. So we've experienced that. And now we've been married 22 years.
Yes.
Right?
22 years.
22 years, okay. And so we've done it wrong, we've done it right, and so we have some perspectives on how to do it. We've done some studying on it. We try to help the couples in our church, and we just noticed that as Christians, marriage and the family are under attack. And so, what are some of the things that we can do about it? Is what we want to get into. So,
Right. Let's talk about expectations because I know that's a biggie,
Right.
In marriages and why they fail and relationships. How do misplaced or unspoken expectations set couples up for disappointment?
Well, disappointment doesn't come from what you get. It comes from what you expect it to get, okay? And so sometimes we're looking for other people to make us whole, to make life interesting. We're looking for other people to kind of be Jesus for us, okay, to make us happy people. And that I believe marriage is only for happy people. In other words, if I did a marriage test like you do a driver's test,
Right.
I would want to make sure that you were already happy before you get married, okay? And so marriage does not make you happy unless you have happiness skills
Right.
in your life already, and that you already know how to be happy, how to focus on the right things, how to make the best of things, how to control what your focus is, those kinds of things. And so I believe we have unrealistic expectations about what marriage is supposed to do for us, and then when we get into it and they don't measure up, then we think maybe it's not marriage that's the problem. Maybe I married the wrong person.
Right.
Okay, and so then we began to think about divorce, about putting away the marriage
Did I
and
make a
moving
bad
on.
mistake? Was this a good
moving on to
decision?
something else.
Right.
But the problem with that is that when you go to another relationship, you follow you into it. And so whatever you were lacking in the first one, you will bring to the second one. And if you don't change those expectations and how you approach it, the result is going to be the same. I think that's why more second marriages fail than first marriages, is because the people don't change. They don't take responsibility for their part in the divorce.
Right.
And as a result, they don't change. And so expecting something that your mate can't do for you is a setup for failure.
Give me an example. I mean, we've been married for 22 years. And then from our previous marriage, what is an example of anyone that you know? What's a false expectation? Right? What do you think is like a common false expectation in marriage that people have?
That I'll be happy with the other person automatically, without
Right.
any work, without any understanding, without any knowledge. I know some of the things that we probably need to talk about are the grace aspect of marriage, the knowledge aspect of marriage. Okay, and so when I go, it takes skill to be married.
Right.
It takes people talk about emotional intelligence, okay? It takes a degree of skill in order to relate to people the right way. If we don't understand it, some people just naturally are better at it than others.
Right.
But if you're not good at it, you can be better by studying it and being informed about how to relate to people. Okay, and so that's a big deal is the whole marriage skill piece. We don't teach people how to be married successfully.
Right.
Okay, and then there's a heart piece, having a heart for one another. Okay, there's a commitment piece. I believe the figures on arranged marriages, which to me would seem like a nightmare, to be stuck with somebody you didn't choose, but the figures on successful marriages among arranged marriages are way higher than other marriages where you choose your mate.
Right.
And why is that? It's because of commitment.
Right.
It's because they're committed, and commitment allows you to ride out those tough times, those times when you need to change, those times when you need to grow, those times when you need to be patient. Commitment is actually the glue that holds marriage together.
So do you feel we have a commitment problem in our society?
Yeah, we have a definite commitment problem. I know I've harped on it a lot, but the whole covenant piece, understanding the nature of covenant,
Right.
I think is a problem in our society, because what covenant does is it protects you from self-interest. Okay, the commandment we have as Christians is to love. Okay, so I think a loving couple will make a happy marriage if they understand what the Bible means when it talks about love.
Right.
Okay, love is a desire to benefit another at your own expense. So that means at its essence, love is sacrificial. And so when I see couples who are not making it, I see somebody who refuses the sacrifice, who's putting themselves first and putting what they need first ahead of the health of the marriage.
And give me an example. Like, what do you mean?
Well, if a person wants a kind of support, they want a type of communication. Okay, a woman knows how she wants to be treated. And when the man falls in love with her, he's doing that by nature. He's doing that naturally.
Right.
He's being driven by the fresh new love thing. Once it's not fresh anymore, that tends to drop off.
Right.
And you have to become intentional about what you used to do by nature. Okay?
Absolutely.
So you have to make a decision to be communicative. You have to make a decision to be romantic. When you first fall in love, all that stuff just seems to have a life of its own, if as it were. And so we have to know and be mature enough to know how to renew love, because fresh love is what we all want. We all want new, fresh love. And so if you don't know how to renew love, you tend to want to look to another person to have a new relationship. That makes sense.
Right. Have you seen situations where partners expected the other to just know what they needed? How do you, as a married couple, dwell together in knowledge? Because I think knowledge and understanding is really important too about your mate.
Right.
What is your mate like? What are their love languages? I remember when we were first married, we did a love language test. But before we did the test, you were telling me what my love language was. You said, I know your love language. I know your love language.
Right.
And I forgot what you said it was. Do you remember what you said it was? But I said, no, it's touch. And but my top one was touch. And you said, no, that's not your touch one. Your top one is this. I said,
right.
I'm
can't
looking
remember
at
what
you
I thought it was.
like, hello, I'm telling you what my love language is.
Right.
And then we took the test, and I showed you, like, I told you this with the top link. So I think the knowledge thing is important, living together in knowledge and understanding of each other. And so why do you feel that's such a problem? Why is it hard to have understanding between each other, especially when there's the love factor is there?
Well, I think some of it is pride. I think some of it, we romanticize the whole concept that God has somebody for you. And what we mean when we say that is God has somebody who's going to know my ins and outs, my ups and downs, and be able to adjust to me without us talking about it, without it being any work. you hear things like "made in heaven." This was a match made in heaven. This person is perfect for me. But what does that mean? Okay, does that mean you don't have to talk to them about what you want, and your desires and your hopes and dreams? And so I think we romanticize the concept of God putting two people together. Okay, I often mention when I'm talking about this the fact that I used to work for the auto industry. Okay, and I worked in two different plants. One was body parts, and one was transmission. Well, body parts don't do anything; they're just to be seen. Okay, cosmetic. And so you didn't have the tight tolerances on those parts. As long as it fit together and it looks good, it's okay. Okay. But when we were making transmissions, it had moving parts. So we had really tight tolerances, okay, of like 1/1000th of an inch or something, that if it was off 1/1000th of an inch, you throw it away. It wouldn't work. And so here you have a transmission that's made to perfection to work together. But if you take the oil out of it, it'll burn up. The friction, just the friction from the movement will burn it up. And so even if you're made for each other, you need the grace that God brings in order to allow it to run, or to allow it to function. And that grace is something we could talk about at some point.
Right. So what is grace in the marriage? How does that play out? And so, for example,
there's two studies I used to cite. One was from the SUNY University in Syracuse, New York University in Syracuse. They did a study on successful marriages, and they found that the thread between them was find the most positive explanation for your mate's behavior and believe it.
Right.
Okay. The Gottmans, who did the popular book on 7 Principles of Marriage, they did a similar study, and they found out something similar, but it's expressed in different words. They found out that successful marriages have a positive overriding outlook on their mate's behavior.
Right.
Okay, so how do I look at what my mate does? What lens do I look at my mate's behavior through? And that is the common thread between successful marriages, and where marriages don't work, they don't have that positive attitude towards their mate's behavior. So in other words, the Bible tells me not to judge. And so when I judge, I'm looking at your behavior, and I'm ascribing to your behavior motives and reasons why you do what you do.
Well, let's break that down, because that's a lot. And it's easy to talk about examples of what that's like, because I think people in their mind, they feel like they're right. And then in the marriage couple, and they feel like, I'm right, you're wrong in this.
Right.
And so you don't really see the other person, but the messy factor.
Yep.
I know that you like to leave your shoes, all over the place. You create closets where there are no closets.
Right.
And it's so funny because yesterday, I told our grandson, go put his shoes up in the shoe area in the mudroom. He said, I'm going to put my shoes right by Pop-Pop shoes, which was in the kitchen. I said, Pop-Pop shoes doesn't need to be it's not supposed to be in the kitchen either. Go put your shoes.
Right.
So something like that. It depends upon, how you feel. If you're a neat person and you just clean up the house, let's give that example.
Well,
and your spouse is not as neat, as organized as you, and you have shoes or you have something laid around, it could feel disrespectful to the person who just labored to get it together. And so you can make a judgment, which is another important thing. And
the Bible tells you not to do that.
Not to judge, right.
Because I don't know your heart.
Right.
I don't know why you do what you do.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, unless you tell me.
Right.
Okay, and if you tell me you don't care, I'll leave the shoes where I want to.
Right.
And I don't care. Then now you know my heart.
Right,
and now
absolutely.
Now you can deal with that accordingly, okay? But what I do is if I ascribe motives and intent to behavior, and I don't know somebody's heart, then I can judge them and react to what they're doing in a negative way, as opposed to having a positive overriding attitude towards my mate's behavior. And so it's not getting rid of right and wrong. There is a place where the shoes are supposed to go.
Right, absolutely.
That's a right place, okay? The thing is when they're in the wrong place, why are they in the wrong place? It's a matter of wiring. Is it a matter of how my husband is wired, or is he just blatantly disregarding where he's supposed to put his shoes.
Why can't it be both? No, it can't. It can't be both. But let's talk about the wiring piece, because I think when something like that happens, then people again start to judge. Well, the judgment is that you don't care about me. The judgment is, in that situation, you don't care that I just cleaned this place up.
Right.
You're always disregarding me. I always feel like you're not trying to help me in the household. And so those are judgments. And so it's almost like I am, you are, naming somebody. And so I think that sometimes people don't realize it's hard to overcome a name,
Right.
In your marriage, because now it's almost like you cut away your partner in some ways, and so the intimacy is destroyed. So if I say you don't care about me, it's a negative.
Yeah, and it creates an expectation.
Right.
And so now, when I'm trying to show you that I care, you feel that I'm just responding to the fact that you said I don't care,
right?
As opposed to really caring.
Doesn't feel real. And all those things break down the relationship.
Absolutely. So the whole grace piece is something God requires of us, just as Christians, is that I don't judge people. Okay, I don't ascribe motive and intent to a person's behavior, like I said, unless they tell me.
Right.
And so a lot of times we'll because of the way our thinking is, we'll look at something as racism when it just might have been subjective. It just might have been personal. It might not have been a color thing. Okay, but unless you tell me that. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of times we'll make things something that they're not, because we're judging a person's heart, and the Bible tells us not to do that. So definitely we shouldn't do it in marriage. Okay, and what the Gottmans discovered, I think, is 67 or 69% of marriage problems are unsolvable. They're related to how a person is wired, as opposed to character issues. Now, there's some things that are just bad, like if I'm lying, if I'm cheating, okay, that's just wrong. That's destructive. Okay, that's sin.
Right.
God doesn't give me a pass for that. Okay, but if I'm wired, sometimes the opposite side of a strength will be a weakness. Okay, you might love that this person is creative and spontaneous and funny and always interesting, but the other side of that is that they may be a little messy and they don't plan things well, and they don't look towards the future enough, for you. And so you have to realize that that's who they are. That's not a character issue. That's the way they're wired. And so to insist that the person change is a subtle form of rejection. In other words, I'm rejecting the way God made you.
Right.
And so I'm asking you to be somebody other than who God made you to be. Because God gives us strengths and weaknesses because of our assignment. Okay, because everyone has a different assignment, we're going to have a unique makeup which complements what God called me to do.
Right.
Okay, assignment function determines design. Okay, so the way God meant for me to function is going to be a complement to the way He designed me.
Right.
And so to reject a person's design, like say for instance, I'm called to spend a lot of time in prayer, which means I'm very comfortable being alone.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Which we call an introvert. Okay. And it's not that I don't like people. I think sometimes people project introversion into being mean. They call themselves an introvert because they're mean. They don't like people.
Right.
But introversion has nothing to do with liking or not liking people. It has to do with how you energize.
Right.
And so I energize alone. So when I'm with people, it costs me energy. So I have to pull myself aside, okay, and re-energize at a certain point. And when the energy gets low, everything goes south.
Right. That goes back to knowledge, because
knowledge. Yeah, if you're married to an introvert or
right.
extrovert, you have to understand
and
how
all
their
those things are
wiring
important
is.
to even find out before you get married.
Yep.
A lot of times you see signs, but I think that because the love is so fresh and so vibrant in the beginning, you don't really kind of park. You don't relax into your true self until after you're married. So it's really really important to understand how you're wired. How would you put how do you see control with judgment? How would you correlate judgment with control?
Well, I think
and immaturity.
Yeah, I think
3 of those.
I think judgment can translate into control when you try to make the person become somebody else. I think that can become manipulation and control. Okay, when I try to make you somebody you weren't wired to be, we can all be better.
Right.
Okay, we can all. In other words, I don't take my wiring as a pass for everything negative about my wiring. In other words, I want to develop coping skills.
Right.
Okay, and
Around
so
those.
I've had to learn as an introvert. It's time to come out of the office and talk to people. It's time to go and fellowship. Okay, and so I need to know that I'm comfortable without doing that, and so I'm going to have to intentionally do that sometimes. And there may be cues. I think sometimes introverts don't pick up on cues, social cues that we're supposed to have. So you'll have to remind me, Joel, hey,
Right. This
you
is
need
a
to do
moment.
this, you need to
Right.
do that. And because of the grace piece, I'm supposed to be open to it. And that it's not a matter of somebody's nagging me to do something I don't want to do. Because I realize because of my wiring, I need to maybe have some compensatory actions
Right.
that compensate for my lack in this area, that area. And it's just being honest and transparent and vulnerable. Vulnerable simply means to allow people to speak into your weaknesses so that you can change.
Right.
And not take it personal, not take a criticism as an attack, as it were.
Right.
Okay, and so when you know who you are, when you know how you're wired, then people can speak into that because there's a chance they're right, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the ways how that grace plays into that.
Yeah, with all the skills, and the things that we're talking about, what needs to happen. I think one of the biggest thing, understanding wiring, how does immaturity fit in that? Because I could know the right thing. I mean, immaturity is alarming sometimes, when you realize how the extent of people's immaturity. I think is one of the main factors why people don't grow, they don't develop, why relationships fail. Immaturity and misplaced responsibility or irresponsibility.
Right.
How do you see that as being an issue?
Well, immaturity is
relationships?
Immature people see what other people should do or could have done to make their life better.
Yeah.
Okay? Mature people see what they can do or what they could have done to make the situation different. And so I can come in as a pastor and I don't feel the sound is right. And I can sit there and be bummed about the sound, or I can go back to the sound booth and say, hey, man, I think the highs are a little up, or I think maybe it's a little loud. Maybe we need to bring it down a little bit and take responsibility for it since I'm the pastor, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so, or else I can just sit around and be bummed about the way it is and complain. And so immature people don't take responsibility for where they are, and they tend to blame people and project their guilt onto others, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so that makes for a really unhappy marriage. Okay, because when I was single, I didn't have anybody to blame my unhappiness on.
Right.
And now that I'm married, you're the reason.
You're the reason.
You're the
Absolutely.
cause. Okay, if you did this, if you would do this, and what we have to understand is that responsibility and irresponsibility are thinking habits.
Right. Good.
It's a mindset.
Good.
So I don't decide to be immature. Immaturity just determines how I respond to situations and
That's
circumstances.
good.
I respond in an immature way because that is my mindset. A mindset is a fixed, is a how can I say it? It's fixed in advance of your situation, okay? And it determines how I respond to situations and circumstances. It's a fixed attitude or disposition that predetermines how I respond to situations and circumstances. So if I have a mindset, a victim mindset, and things don't work out right, then I'm going to take it as a victim. If the waitress brings me something other than what I ordered, she did it on purpose.
Right.
You just don't respect me. You weren't listening to me, rather than she just made a mistake.
Right.
Or the person in the kitchen didn't read the order right.
Right.
And so
marriage, I didn't understand
So I
something.
internalize things. So every situation now becomes a battle. And when I'm battling for respect, and so I'm trying to get control of you because I want you to not treat me that way, rather
Right.
than taking and owning how I feel and respond to situations.
How do you know that you're immature? Because
You
I think,
don't.
yeah, and that's just
You
I
have
think
to listen.
have people around you that you know that
Yeah.
are sound. I mean,
Right.
the Bible constantly talks about changing your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
changing the way you think, and so I think in marriage is such a real important thing because I think some people feel good about holding people to the fire on something.
Right.
It's like
Right.
it gives them a false sense of authority or
Yeah.
righteousness. I'm right.
It does. It does. I remember the movie Jaws. Okay. Now, when I went to see the movie Jaws, I'm in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm hundreds and hundreds of miles away from any sharks.
Right.
It's not possible that I'm going to run into a shark in my situation. But I'm sitting there watching these sharks on the screen and hearing the music, dun, 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 dun. And I'm experiencing fear of a shark,
Right.
if that makes sense. Okay. Now, when the movie's over, it was all a projection. And so what we have to know is that projections feel real.
Yes.
And when I project my guilt to you, I really feel like you're my problem. It really feels, when actually it's just a projection.
But what's that self-satisfaction that people get to make you their problem? It's like they feel good about this, which is why they can't let it go.
Well, it
hold it,
rids them of the guilt. It rids them of the responsibility of what they did.
Right.
So it takes that away, and so that's a big deal. Let's get into that on the next one.
Yeah.
On the next one, let's
great.
get right back into that projection piece and talk about that and explain that some more. Okay.
Great. Sounds good.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate it. We look forward
That's
to talking
good.
to you again.
Yes.